Hey, bestie. I can't wait to talk to you today. On that note, I find myself wondering, have you ever felt like a total fraud? Like, even when you worked so hard, achieved something great, and maybe that you should even feel proud of yourself? Like, have you ever worried that any moment from now, someone is going to find out that you're just not as good, smart, or capable as you think? Well, here's the truth: you're not alone. This is what psychology has coined imposter syndrome. And it is something that impacts pretty much the most accomplished people and everyday people, like CEOs, best selling authors, doctors, creatives alike. And I'm going to raise myself. And me too. I have totally had imposter syndrome. But here's the truth, friend: imposter syndrome is a liar. And today we're going to expose it, break it down, and most importantly, give you some tools to move past this confidently with your own skills, your own gifts, and have some success here. So, in this episode, just to give your brain a preview of where we're going to talk about why imposter syndrome is so important, how it holds us back, what imposter syndrome actually is, how to overcome it so you can fully step into the life that you were meant to live. You know that I am all about being the you that you were created to be. And then I'm going to give you some questions to just give you the opportunity to shift your mindset if you so choose. So, if you are ready to stop doubting yourself and start owning your own brilliance, friend, let's dive in. Now, I decided that I even wanted to talk about this because my students have been talking about this. I've been in practicum, which is, if you don't know what practicum is, these are counselors in training, budding baby counselors. If you're listening to this and you're a budding baby counselor, please do not take offense to that. That is just what you are. And so I am working with counselors who have the education. They've done pretty much most of their classwork, and now they're at this place where they get to start applying their skills, and their skills are growing. And most of them, at some point or another, have massive imposter syndrome. Like, am I even cut out for this? There's no way that I could possibly be good at this. Yeah, just really facing themselves. And by the way, you know this about me. I think facing ourselves is so important. The bravest thing that you will ever do is face the you on the other side of the mirror. And we also have to be willing to face the person that's looking back at us going, hey, you're an imposter. You're a fraud. Somebody's going to find out. I remember that even after I got my PhD, even, where it's like that's the highest possible education level. I've put in my 10,000 plus hours counseling at this point, and I'm an expert, what at least what science would say is an expert. And sometimes I still have those moments where I'm like, I'm just not as good as I think I am. Like, it's in my head, or I have something like a challenge that I think that I should be able to overcome relatively quickly. And I run into a wall there in some way. And that sneaky little imposter syndrome can, for lack of a better word, sneak up on me. Like, I bet that it has with you. So, for a moment, let's just talk about why this is important before we start to break this down. I want to give you some statistics, and these come from research. They're not made up statistics. I could point you to the studies if you really wanted to know. 82% of people say that they experience imposter feelings. 82%. I think the other 18% might be higher in narcissistic traits. I joke, I'm teasing. But 82%, that is the majority of the population. And then you have 75% of women executives say that they've experienced imposter syndrome. And again, these are the women that have earned these higher level, like C-suite type positions in their career. And they say they've experienced imposter syndrome. 85% in another study says that CEOs feel out of their depth in their role. And these are people that have earned it. They have put in the time, they've put in the hours, they've earned it. A mass majority of the population feels this way or has felt it. I'm not saying it's all the time, but has felt it. I want you to recognize that if this is you, if you've ever felt this way, you, friend, are in good company. Imposter syndrome keeps you stuck. This is why this is important. It causes high achieving, capable people like you to hold back, to play small, to second guess themselves, to even when they are fully qualified. I want you to just like let that sit with you, even when they're fully qualified. It also impacts your mental health. There are studies that show that imposter syndrome is linked to higher levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. I want you to think about if you've ever felt this way, that living in a constant state of stress in your own life, of that constant state of self doubt, is exhausting. I felt that way before because you're constantly doubting what you're doing and who you are. This may or may not be a surprise to you, but imposter syndrome impacts more women than men. So, since I primarily talk to my ladies over here, we are susceptible to this, ladies. And then this is so frustrating, but it's just true that imposter syndrome shows up even after success, even after you have proved yourself. You may still find that it is that you feel like that need to achieve more or feel that you are going to be exposed as a fraud. We got to talk about this. And, it's buzzy in the psychology world, but it's buzzy because, again, 82% of people say that they've experienced it. So let's just get clear for a moment. Now we know why this is important, why I even decided to talk about this. Let's get a good definition for what imposter syndrome actually is. Imposter syndrome is the psychological pattern. So just let me pause there. The psychological pattern, meaning you've done this more than once, you've had this thought more than once, of doubting your achievements and feeling like a fraud despite clear evidence that you're competent. Despite clear evidence that you're competent. It's not just this lack of confidence. It's deeper than that. It can be this belief that somehow you don't deserve your success. You don't deserve what I want to say is what you've earned. And eventually others are going to figure it out. Can you imagine the kind of anxiety that would pull up in somebody having those thoughts on repeat? Research backs this up, by the way. We've been talking about this it's been about on the scene for since 1978, which, if my math is accurate, that's almost 50 years. And this study, which was one of the original studies on imposter syndrome, or I should say at least one of the main works, this particular study has even been cited, which means, if you don't know what cited means, it means other authors that are publishing on this topic are referring back to this article. So one of this original articles has been cited over 4,000 times. 4,000. And their research shows that highly capable individuals internalize failure more than success, that they attribute wins to luck or external factors rather than their own competence. So let's just slow down with that for a second. When we're dealing with imposter syndrome, uh, we are internalizing, meaning I am making failure about me, about something that I did, something that's wrong or bad about me, that it is my character. It's who I am. Me as a person is fundamentally not right. And so when I fail, it's me. But when I succeed, it's because it was luck, I met the right person, something outside of me caused it to happen rather than my own competence. Now, I'd like to just give a quick disclaimer here. I totally believe in life that alignment in relationship is everything, that a lot of it is about who you know, that there's truth in that, and it doesn't matter who you know if you show up and you can't do the job. Competence is a really big deal. So I want to share. This is not my work. This is somebody else's, but I think it can be really helpful for you. So Dr. Valerie Young, her research has identified 5 types of imposter syndrome. Now I think you can probably be more than one of these. And the first one is the perfectionist. This person believes that anything less than perfect is failure. This person overworks and fears mistakes. I mean, that's a lot. Just anything less than perfect is failure. And by the way, again, if you've listened to me plenty of times, you know that I love Tony Robbins, and I've probably used this quote before. And that is that perfection is the lowest standard because it's impossible. Tony Robbins says that. He's the man. The second one is the expert. They feel they never know enough and they avoid opportunities unless they are fully qualified. Yeah, those two can go together for sure. And then you have the soloist, the person that feels that they must do everything alone. If if you have to ask for help, that means that you're not capable. Number 4 is the natural genius. This person believes that success should come easily and struggles when things actually take effort. 5, the superwoman, the superman. These persons feel like they must excel in every single role of life, work, relationships, family, in order to prove their worth. I got to be honest with you. When I was reading these and studying for this podcast, I was like, while I probably wouldn't tell you that I identify as a natural genius, I at least 4 out of the 5 of those I have absolutely experienced. That I have totally been the person that's like, I cannot fail. I've overworked myself, feared mistakes. I felt like I couldn't do something because I wasn't quote unquote fully qualified. And this is even after having my doctorate, which is like there's some laughable and some not my doctorate is laughable, but like that somehow I'm not fully qualified. That I've needed to be able to do things on my own, that if I can't, that I'm not capable. And that I have to be excel. I don't want to say perfect, but that seemed to be the word that came out of my mouth is that I have totally felt like I needed to be perfect in every area of my life to be qualified, to prove that I have value. If you're listening to this, I'm just going to pause for a second. Which one of these resonates most with you? If you deal with imposter syndrome, which type are you? All right, friend, now that you've thought through that, let's talk about how people cope with imposter syndrome. And by the way, not in a good way, okay? Let's just be real about this for a second. When imposter syndrome creeps in, we all have ways of trying to handle this. And most of us don't grow when we utilize these coping strategies. They keep us small. They don't help us expand. They don't help us grow. We stay small. So if you see any of these coping strategies in yourself, well, just stay with me. Let's get some awareness. No shame in the game. And then let's talk about how we're going to shift it. So people commonly do things like when they're trying to manage imposter syndrome, that they'll play small, stay quiet. When you do this, you hold yourself back from sharing your ideas, from asking questions, because you're afraid that you'll sound stupid. And I just heard my daughter's voice in my head. She's 6 and she would go, "Mommy, we don't say that word." She's right because no. The next one is overwork and over prepare. You feel like you have to do things twice as hard, twice as much as everyone else to prove that you deserve your spot. Prove your worth. The next one is turn up the charm. You rely on being likable and reading the room instead of fully believing in your skills and knowledge. Sometimes this one is a result of trauma, a traumatic upbringing, by the way. The next is procrastinate and avoid. You put off tasks because deep down, you're afraid that they won't be good enough anyways. Then you then you put them off so long that you're rushing to put them together and they're definitely not your best work. What about those people that never start things or finish them? Never finish. Sometimes when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, you freeze up at the starting line or you get so caught up in perfecting whatever it is that you never actually hit submit. Maybe you know, s- just I just lost my brain there. I'm gonna leave this here because I might normally edit it out, but since we're talking about imposter syndrome, I'm just gonna totally leave the part where I lost my brain because that's a part of being a human and maybe a mom. All right. So next is constantly changing direction. Maybe you job hop, you switch paths, you pivot often, not because it's what you truly want, because you feel like you don't belong. Maybe you self sabotage, whether that's consciously or unconsciously. Most self sabotage is in the unconscious. And you do things that undermine success because you don't believe that you should have it anyways. So, just as a quick recap, the common ways that we manage imposter syndrome are play small and stay quiet, overwork and overprepare, we turn up the charm, we procrastinate and avoid, maybe never start, never finish, constantly change direction, and self sabotage. Here's the problem though, bestie. The world needs you. The people in your sphere need you. When you let imposter syndrome drive, you're not just holding yourself back. You are robbing those in your sphere, those in the world, those that are going to come in contact with you in some way of your gifts, of your brilliance, of what God put in you to share in the world. Here's the thing again, it is costing you and others. It's costing you. I want you to really get a picture of this cost. You stay quiet instead of sharing your ideas that could change the game. A lot of times, people that deal with this have really amazing ideas, but they're afraid that someone else will think that they're stupid. You don't go after these challenges that could grow you into the next level of who you are. And likely, you get overlooked for promotions, leadership, new opportunities because you're playing small. If you're dealing with imposter syndrome, it's also costing you because you're over personalizing constructive feedback and making it about your worth instead of your growth. It's going to limit you. You might even be putting off important projects that could move your life or your career forward. You might stay in these cycles of job hopping, sabotaging your success before it fully lands. You might even be living in this constant state of stress, fatigue, this not enoughness. Nonsense is what that is. And Bestie, here's the deal. That's not what we're here for. Hear me. The world needs you, not a watered down, not a second guessing, not a holding back version of you. The world needs the real, bold, talented, capable you. The you that you were created to be. The you that has all of these things stored up, waiting to come forth, waiting to burst out. They're there. You just have to see you for you. So, you know, we got to talk about how you deal with this. So, how do you combat imposter syndrome? Well, first of all, you got to challenge that inner critic. That voice in your head that says you're not enough or you're just lucky. That part of you is not telling the truth. You need to replace these negative thoughts with facts. I've worked for this. I'm prepared. I deserve to be here. I've earned my place. I love the word earned. Can't tell you how often that I use that in conversation, sometimes positively or not. Earned, something is earned. You've worked for it. I want you to recognize that you can challenge your inner critic. And by the way, you need to do it. Don't just have awareness of it, do it. Nike was on to something. The second thing is, I really want to encourage you to, and these are from research, by the way, these are research based suggestions, is you need to keep a success journal. If this is something, it's not something, if this is something for you that you deal with consistently, often, on repeat, this number two one is definitely for you. You need to start a proof journal where you write down achievements, compliments, and milestones. And then you need to have a habit of reviewing your progress because what that does is it helps your brain focus on what you have accomplished. This is a rewiring of your brain, which again is so amazing that we can actually do. You got to do it. If you deal with this regularly, often, create a proof journal and review it. Help your brain create new pathways. Number 3, you have got to learn to reframe failure and mistakes. High achievers tend to magnify mistakes and minimize success. Instead of thinking, I messed up, I am a fraud, I want you to try, I've learned from this. It's making me stronger. Failure is a part of growth, and I am always growing. Uh, NLP, which you know that I love, also says that failure is simply feedback. That's all it is. Failure is feedback. I can't remember her name. I want to call her Sarah, but I'm not certain that that's true. But she's Bad Mama Jamma because she's the woman that created Spanx. And her father had a pattern of asking her and her brother every day when they came home, what'd you fail at today? Because if you were failing, that means you were trying. If you were failing, that means you were growing. If you were failing, that means that you were pushing yourself to the next level. Some of you need to reframe failing. Some of you need to go, all right, I got to fail at something. Might as well do it. I'm learning from it. I'm growing. It's making me stronger. This is a part of life. Number 4, and I did an entire podcast on this that I will link in the show notes. You need to stop comparing yourself. Comparison is a losing game. When you're dealing with imposter syndrome, you're going to compare yourself and shrink. You're going to you're going to see yourself in a more negative light. There's a positive type comparison, but I'm not talking about that. It's when and you know this, people talk about it in social media. You know, it's like we compare our behind the scenes life to somebody's highlight reel. We emphasize perfection over progress when really what we need to emphasize is progress over perfection. If I'm going to compare myself to anyone, which I know kind of negates what I'm saying, but just stay with me. If I'm going to compare myself to anyone, it's going to be me. Am I becoming a better version of me than I was yesterday, than I was last week, than I was last month, the year before? That comparison is still about progress. It's not about perfection. Remember, perfection is the lowest standard because it doesn't exist. It's impossible. Progress over perfection. And then we need to talk about it. This is where I think about how powerful it was in my prac class, where students were like, yeah, me too, me too, me too. I felt that way too. When we open up about it, we realize that we're not alone. I remember when I was early on in professoring, and I was talking to some friends that were also professors. And we were just talking about imposter syndrome. And the more we opened up about it, the more we talked about it, we realized that we're not alone. There's so much power in that. You know, I can't give you the exact scripture right now because I didn't prepare for it. My brain's just recalling. But when we bring things to the light, they lose their power. And I want you to really recognize that when you bring this, it's really a fear. When you bring this fear to the light, it loses its power. You're not alone. Oh yeah, me too. And then you also get to talk about how you addressed it. And maybe you need to find a great counselor, a coach, a bestie, someone in your life to one to help you sort through this and also to remind you how capable you really are because it's a lot. You need to take number 6 is you need to take aligned action anyway. I'm going to say that again. You need to take aligned action anyway. Friend, sometimes you just have to do it afraid. You have to do it afraid. Confidence doesn't come before action, it comes from taking action. I'm going to say that again. Confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes from taking action. No one needs to be brave if there's never fear. You need to recognize the feel the fear, call out imposter syndrome for what it is, and move forward anyway. You have to do it anyway. You have to go talk to those people. You have to publish that paper. You have to sit in front of somebody else. You have to, whatever it is that you have dealt with imposter syndrome, you have to do it afraid. I actually think that this is my most powerful point because you can't get away from action. You must do it because if you don't, I really want you to get how important this is. If you don't take action, one, you communicate to your unconscious mind that you don't want it. And two, you reinforce the fear. You reinforce the belief that you're an imposter, that you're a fraud. See, you're safe because you played small. See, you're safe because you didn't take the action. Friend, you must take action. You must. Now, in true Dr. Britt fashion, I am totally going to ask you some questions about this. They're always in the show notes if you want to read them. But I really encourage you to pause. If you're driving, pull over, reflect through these. So the first question is, what is one area of my life where I feel like a fraud, even though I have evidence that I'm capable? Number 2, when I experience self-doubt, do I have a pattern of attributing success to external factors like luck, timing, or other people? Number 3, what would I tell a friend who is struggling with imposter syndrome? And then, can I apply this advice, this grace to myself? Number 4, What is one fear I have that, if I stopped believing it, would allow me to step into my potential? Just one. And then, in typical fashion, what small action can I take today? Not tomorrow, tomorrow never comes. What small action can I take today to start rewiring my belief in my own competence? Bestie, imposter syndrome is a thief. Steals your joy, your confidence, your opportunities. But now we took off the glasses. You can see it for what it is, and you have the power to push past it. So today, what I want you to do is just pick one strategy, start implementing it. Keep a success journal, take action, do the things, reframe. Share this episode with a friend that needs it, that needs this reminder. And come come check out, come hang out. Come hang out with me in the besties group if you're not already in it, where we can lift each other up, dig into these topics and step forward in confidence. And if this episode spoke to you, let me know. Leave some comments on this podcast. Bestie, you're not a fraud. You're not an imposter. You are worthy of everything you have and everything you are becoming. Now go freaking own it. Until next week.